Hey everybody, welcome to a show. Today's topic is going to be the question of, can everything actually work out? This is one of those things where when you're in the early stages of this, the answer is going to be a resounding no. Of course not. Things aren't going to work out. It's horrible. Everything's ruined. My reputation, my career, my finances, my relationship with my kids. I'm sure if you are going through this, you probably can relate to that comment or what I'm just saying here, because I know for me, when I was going through this, experiencing the interesting joys of these nightmares, I thought there's no way that this could get any better, and that my life is just basically garbage forever. I remember thinking at one point that, maybe 20 or 30 years later, maybe everything I was doing, the kids would recognize and say, "Hey, Dad, I appreciate everything you've done." Technically, I don't think I've had that comment yet. Maybe for my oldest, but the comment has been made in other ways. But I want to discuss this a little bit today and hopefully help you see a pathway through your own situation. Anyways, so I'm going to start off with, this is kind of my talking points for today. If you're watching the video version of the podcast, you'll see this on the screen. But we'll start off with catastrophic thinking. And I'm not sure about you, but I can tell you, for me personally, I had a horrible time with this. And it's crazy. I just saw that no matter, or everything I thought of was like, oh, this is going to go wrong, that's going to go wrong. I could not see even the potential positives that were actually occurring. And what I can tell you from my experience working with coaching clients is this is a mindset that most people get into. I mean, oh, this is the worst thing ever. This is it. This is the death blow. A week later, this is the death blow. A couple weeks later, now this is. And the reality is, you have to take a step back and not try to basically. See, here's the problem with it. You need to kind of anticipate what might happen just so you can mentally prepare for it, but you can't let it control your life. You can't let it control everything that you're doing, because it will just screw with you. I mean, now you can still come out the other end of this okay-ish. And what I'll say from my personal experience is all the time, I used to think that my hypersensitivity to the potential for catastrophe gave me an edge. So it was really hard for me to let that go, because, well, that's the only reason things have worked out, is because I'm so hyper-focused on it. And that is not the case. Actually, I think probably had I shifted, well, not I think, I know, had I shifted my mindset to the place I've gotten myself in the last 8 years or so, my life would have been a lot better. I'm really hoping I can instill that into my kids. So here's the thing, and this is the next question, or the next point I have on this list is, when you look back, now I understand for you youngsters out there, this might be a little more complicated, but when you look back, how often in the past have things not worked out? Just think about that for a minute, because what I can tell you from my experience, my 52 years on this planet, things have a tendency to work out. It may not be in the way you anticipated, may not be as fun as you thought, but things have a tendency to kind of correct themselves. Now, the key on that, though, is you can't fall into that catastrophic thinking and just accepting defeat out of the hand of victory, so to speak, because there's a good possibility that as you dwell on those negative thoughts, those negative things will actually start to manifest themselves, so to speak. I just want to say, John said he's watching from Germany. John Steinbeck, who's from Brainwashing Children, if you happen to have the ability to come on, I'd love to bring you on afterwards and get your thoughts on this, if that is, if you could probably do that. Probably not, but maybe. So the thing is that going to the next one is, when you think back, how often did things get better? For me personally, most of the time they've gotten better. I can use this scenario, this catastrophic scenario that we're talking about right now today with the divorces and high conflict exes and all that kind of stuff. It has worked out better than I ever could have imagined, but not in the way that I ever would have imagined. This situation is not one of those things where, the ex has been held accountable and I've been made whole and all the money's lost and all the time lost and all that stuff has been regained and recaptured. It hasn't. But what's happened is because of this scenario, this situation, it's forced me to reevaluate my life and basically revamp everything that I've done. Now, a lot of that has been out of necessity, because the reality is that, when your whole life is lit on fire in front of you, you have basically three choices. You can curl up in a ball and completely fall apart. You can do nothing, or you can grow from it. Now, I went through all three of those things. I curled up in a ball in the beginning part of this, catastrophic thinking, just anticipating everything was going wrong. Every time I turned around, it felt like the ex was winning. And that's the thing on this, guys, is that this isn't easy, right? You can't look at the situation or look at my situation and say, oh, okay, well, you're on the other side of it. It wasn't hard. Oh, this was freaking hard. This was a very complicated situation, very painful, very catastrophic in what was happening and the way I felt it was happening. But here's the thing. One of the things that you can do on this, and it took me a few years to get to this point. So I really want to stress that to again point out that it's not easy. This isn't one of those things that just like, oh, you know what? I'll just change my life overnight and everything will be great. And I'll just make my peace with it. And, the fact that I don't have enough money to buy top ramen is okay. Not that it's all about money, but whenever you can't do anything or you can't do a lot of the things that you used to like to do or that would give you the escape, it really just it's like somebody just holding their finger on your head and just, it's like, nope, you're going to have to think about this. So the key on this is taking your power back. And the reality is that there's a lot of steps to it, but it's a lot harder to do. It's a lot harder to put into practice than you can even imagine. And what I mean by that, it's like where you put your intention, where you put your thoughts, where you put, like people will say, don't let them occupy, rent free in your head. And there's a lot of truth to that. And it's not easy to do. I absolutely struggled with that for a long time. And then I started to realize that if I didn't stop focusing on the catastrophic thinking, if I didn't stop focusing on all the bad that I was perceiving in my life at the time, And it was bad. I mean, I'm not saying that, I looked at it and it was a bowl full of rainbows. No, a bowl full of rattlesnakes. It's just one of those things where you have to decide one day that, okay, you know what? I've been dealt this hand. I have to deal with it. I can go back to those three things. I can curl up in a ball. I can do nothing, or I can try to grow from it. And again, the first phase of that I was in for all through the divorce. I thought I'd gotten to the point where things were starting to turn around, and I was feeling pretty good about things after the divorce was final. And then everything exploded, and then it drove me right back down to even the first few months of this entire nightmare, which made me feel at the time that there was no way to get out of this. It was going to last forever. And then finally, that third phase of this, of just saying, okay, I got to do something different. And it was tough. I mean, I remember waking up one day. It's like literal, it's like I awoke. Anyways. And I just had this epiphany. It's like, if I don't reevaluate my life and start doing something different, this is going to kill me. It's going to just corrupt my life. It's going to ruin everything. And I'm allowing it to happen. Again, that's part of the taking your power back. And the really annoying part about this, and I'll go ahead and pull this back up, is all of this is counterintuitive. And what I mean by that is, you're living in a situation to where you feel like you're just like, go, 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 go. It's like everything is immediate. Everything has to be happen today. Something happens, you have to respond to it immediately. And you get caught up in this mode of basically just constantly trying to fight and defend yourself. And the reality is you don't. And the reality is that when you do, you're actually hurting yourself. So I'll tell you, the first thing that really helped me out is when I finally realized that basically what the ex was doing is taking her bony little finger and going boop right in my eye to try to get me to respond, to react. When I realized that it was basically a game. It's like, well, I'm going to poke you, and then you're going to do something, and I'm going to be happy that I got a response from you. I had the power, or like I should say it this way, I had the power to provoke you to feel a certain way or to feel anything. And when I realized that, and the first few times when I was like, hey, you know what? I'm just not going to respond. That non-response actually felt very empowering for me, because it was like, well, you want me to do this, and I am not going to do it, at a defiance almost. Now, the next part about this, and I know you guys have heard me talk about this a long time, is changing your perspective and rebaselining your life. It is really hard, and this kind of goes down to the last one. It's really hard to let go of that, but it's really hard to look at what you thought your life was, what you thought that illusion was, the relationship, the future. And what's funny is you don't look at all the chaos. Like when you're going through this, when I was going through this, I was not thinking about, thank God I've gotten away from this nightmare. I was thinking about, oh my God, I wanted to spend my life with this person. I wanted to, sit on a porch in a rocking chair, sipping a coffee, watching the sunset. Our son, it's, I'll just say this. It's really weird. I've never been a morning person. Now it seems like I wake up earlier. Who else is dealing with that? So all that, got obliterated. And for the longest time, I kept spinning my wheels, comparing what I thought my new life was to my old life, and my expectations of what I thought that life was going to be. And it was hard. And it was hard to basically say, or it was hard to accept the fact that that's over. It's over. You can't undo it. You can't go back into it. Even if you did try to go back into it, you're basically walking into a nightmare or trying to get yourself plugged back into the matrix. And it's not feasible. It's not one of those things that you can actually pull off and do. And it was really tough. You know, I went from building a whole career, a whole life, all this stuff, that it was just washed away. I mean, every time I had a bill come up or something, you know, something stupid like my tires on my truck, I'm like, oh, I need new tires. I can't afford it. I can't even afford 2 tires. I can't even afford, you know, used tires. You know, and then you kind of look at it, and I was what I should have done back then, and I couldn't allow myself to do, is I should have said, okay, here's a situation, here's a problem, how do I fix it? What do I do to resolve this issue? Unfortunately, what I did is I kept ruminating about, well, before this happened, I had the resources to do it. Before this happened, my credit rating was high and I had credit cards and I had access to money. And this is because of this person, this scenario has messed this up. You know, when the kids were like, oh, I want to do, man. You know, when the kids wanted to do something and it was like, I just had no money to support it. A lot of times that's what got me into a little bit of trouble in the beginning, is I would just, you know, the little credit cards I had, I maxed out. Just mental note, if you're a youngster doing on this, make sure you have an account that is your account, that has only your name on it, that's not a joint account. Because when you go through this and you have to close everything, now your credit history goes from, 15, 20, 25 years of history to 0. And it's a big hit, and then as things start progressing, your ability to get credit starts going out the window and all that kind of stuff. All my kids, I'm going off on a tangent here. All my kids have said, I've helped them create an account. I said, do not ever close this account. Do not ever put anyone else's name on this account. If you get with somebody else, go ahead and create a joint account, but always keep this account. Always keep it, always have it open, always have, hopefully, if you can, a credit card associated with it, and make sure it stays there forever. If you never need it, great. If something ever happens, then you have done yourself a very good thing. And the last part I want to say before I wrap this up and start hitting the comments and stuff is, and I kind of hinted, or I kind of touched this for a second, is letting go is really tough, but it's also very important. And if you are not new at this, but if you're in the beginning stages of this, what I will tell you, and I'm sure you could probably relate to this, it used to irritate the crap out of me when people would say, well, you just got to let it go. You just got to let it go. And it's like, how do you let it go? And the reality is you have to let it go for your own sanity. You have to let it go to be able to take your life back. You have to let it go to be able to take your power back and stop giving it to the person that's trying to crush you. I don't know. I wonder if way back when somebody, when they said you have to let it go, if they would have been able to articulate it like that, if I would have been able to go, oh, I'm sure, I mean, I know me, I think I would struggle with it because I'm like, no, I'm not going to let it go. Never going to let it go. I'm never going to give this person any time I can make their life a little bit painful like mine. I'm going to do it. And don't get me wrong. There was a phase where that's exactly what I wanted to do. I'm sure there's a lot of you guys and gals listening right now who will relate, that you just want trying to think of a colorful word, I'll just say your ex, to feel just a little bit of the pain you're feeling. The reality is that all it does is it holds you to them. Those thoughts, although, I mean, valid, don't get me wrong. I spent a couple of years in that mindset, and it did not help me in any positive way, with one exception, to move on with my life. And what I will say with the one exception is, in the early part of this, unfortunately, that anger kept me going, because it was like, no, I'm not going to give up. I am not going to just crawl into a hole and go away. So that would be the primary rant of this video. I saw that John is unable to jump in. I kind of figured that would be a long shot. Defy Dads, I see you here. Let's see. Charlotte says, hello from England. I have my final custody hearing in August. Hopefully that goes well for you. You got to just... Yeah, it's just, there's a lot of nuances with that. Shane says, hello all. Hope everyone is doing well. Well, I hope you are doing well as well, Shane. And thank you for being a member. I see the little icon next to you. John Halfley says, still working on that, but I'm improving. I think you're talking about the catastrophic thinking. The thing on that, I think, if I'm wrong, let me know. The thing on the catastrophic thinking is you have to put a pattern interrupt in your own mind. If you're lucky enough to have somebody externally that can do that for you, and there's a few people I do that for, but that's not, you got to be able to do it yourself. You have to be able to recognize, whoa, I'm spinning out of control and freaking out. I don't need to go down that road. And you stop yourself. And a lot of times, if you can do that, let's not say if, a lot of times when you do that, it causes your mind to pause for a second. It's like it skips, and then you're able to go, oh, okay, wait a minute. You know, and then a lot of times what I do is I just kind of calm, I'm like, okay, calm yourself down, slow down, kind of even going back to a lot of the stuff that I was talking about, how often does everything go, how often does that catastrophic thought actually occur? Granted, it's probably a little bit easier for me since I'm becoming ancient. So I got more life experience, I guess, or more times at bat to realize, oh, okay, well, I can think back on 35 years worth of things, even in school, and I was like, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. So John says, therapy helps. Yes, it can. It did me. It's weird. It's so many people talk about, okay, don't get me wrong. Therapy can be a crutch, right? Therapy is, in my opinion, is not one of those things that you're supposed to do for the rest of your life. But sometimes an external person to help guide you through your own emotions and what you're dealing with can be very helpful, especially if you find a really good one. I was fortunate that I had a really good one. Spike says, hang in there, peeps. Absolutely. John Halfley says, it's like poison that you sometimes can't help but drink. Oh, dear God. That is such a good point. And I could absolutely agree with that. It's like an addiction, I think. Here's the other thing what I'll say on this, like with the catastrophic thinking. And especially after being in a relationship with a toxic, high conflict person, you get so used to chaos being in your life that when chaos isn't there, you still look for it, and sometimes you create it. Now the hard part about that is a toxic person, that's exactly what they do, right? They look for chaos. They always want it. And when you look at your own self going, well, wait a minute, why am I doing that? You know, if I'm doing that, am I the crazy person? Well, when you get used to something like that, it becomes your norm. And when it's not there, you start to look for it. You start to create it. You want it to be there because it makes you feel, in the discomfort, it makes you feel comfortable. Again, recognizing that, understanding it, putting that pattern interrupt into your own head to where you go, okay, wait a minute, crap, I'm doing this again. And stopping yourself from it is, it's life-changing. It is life-changing. R says, you know, I don't find much relationship talk that takes consideration kids involved or managing all the emotional issues still needing to be dealt with for years after. Goes on to say, I know this is a dad's group, but I look at all sides to see how I can understand rather than want it my way only. And this is, I know it's DSD, that's, you know, but it's not necessarily a dad's forum. I focus more on the fact of dealing with toxic people, and what I can say is that from my experience, they all follow the same patterns. Now, granted, you know, there's a lot more, it appears that there are a lot more dads get goat roped into these nightmares, but moms can too. Yeah, and on the, going back to your other comment, I don't know. I mean, okay, I don't really watch much of this type of content anymore, but I know when I came on the scene, nobody was talking about it in regards to, okay, you have kids and how do you deal with it? And well, I mean, unless it was one of those, you know, the ones that are like, okay, well, you have a deadbeat and you have full custody, and, you know, and how do you keep the other person away? But not many people were talking about in the context of, you know, how do you help your kids? How do you not go insane in the process? So you are definitely welcome to be here, R. Defy Dad to R says, I understand what you're saying. Seems like you are doing lateral parenting based on your response. I think I call that parallel parenting. I tried to co-parent for a while, and when I realized that was just beating my head against the wall, I realized that you basically parallel parent, and it's super confusing for the kids because it's this constant back and forth. Personally, I think you're probably better off if you can get a week on, week off time, so that way you can give the kids time to get some stability with you before they go back. And plus it also gives you an opportunity to have some more time for yourself to start working on yourself. Now, I do know the caveat with this, and this is a problem I had. Actually, I just saw a comment on this in one of my other videos, that on my, excuse me, on the downtime, whenever I didn't have the kids, emotionally, I would crash. I could put on my game face, keep the kids alive, and then, you know, lather, rinse, and repeat. Kind of forced me to have to get back on. But when I was off, meaning when the kids weren't here, oftentimes I just would emotionally crash. And then I'd get myself geared back up for when they would come. And then I was doing that 2-2-4, 2-2-3 thing. Mom always had Monday, Tuesday. I always had Wednesday, Thursday. And then we alternated, you know, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So that schedule sucked, by the way. That was not a lot of fun. Anyways, I wonder if I could show I need to try to catch up on the comments. I'm falling a little behind. Oh, if anyone has a thing directly, okay. If you want to get my attention, do @DSD. It'll pop up and highlight your comment. I am considering turning on the phone lines, so if anyone wants to do that, just put in the live chat that you want me to do that, and I will do that. Oh, Pepe, darn, I missed you. Says, hi, just popping in to say hi, gotta run. He came in just for a boop. Thanks, Pepe. Sorry we didn't get to hang out with you today. John Halfley says, everyone is welcome here. It's about narc abuse on either side, R. Thank you for saying that, John. So I think I'm kind of a unique in that respect as well. Dan Ski says, Duane, credit. What's that when you're a parent being dragged through this nonsense? What's that? Man, I'm missing what you're saying there, Dan. So clarify, and I will comment on that. R says, we never had a joint account. He just sends me money here and there if I need it. I didn't work out because you stayed home with 2 kids and I have no income. You know, it's so weird. I'm kind of conflicted on that. You know, I watch some of the not dating things, like maybe it's dating stuff, you know, like the Whatever podcast. I watch Better Bachelor. I actually like his little rants and stuff, but what I've told my kids, especially my girls, is always have a way to take care of yourself. You never want to be in a situation where you're dependent on somebody and trapped. Then you look at the dating stuff and it's like, you know, oh, well, the way the society is, you know, marriage is bad and, you know, men don't care about women who have money and jobs and yada, yada, yada. I mean, there's all that stuff, but I still would really prefer that my kids are self-sufficient and not dependent. Now, in my scenario, unlike yours are, because in my scenario, the ex was a stay-at-home mom, didn't want to work, wouldn't work. I mean, even at some point when it's like, hey, we need extra money coming in, it was not happening. But instead of, you know, that stereotype where, you know, she's left floating in the breeze, you know, and having to get 2 jobs and whatever to make things work, I paid for everything. I mean, she absolutely lived off me didn't get a job until my middle daughter turned 18 and graduated. So that was 8 years, if I remember correctly. And then the number dropped enough to where you couldn't live on that number. And then that's whenever, you know, she got a job. So it's weird, right? It's funny because you can look at people, and this is my experience as well. It's like whoever the narcissist is, the toxic person, they seem to be able to prevail through court and whatever. And the normal person seems to get just crushed. No matter what the situation is. It's like you are. I mean, stereotypically, you know, you should be getting alimony and child support and all this kind of stuff. And it's like the system supports evil. And it's really, it's I don't know. How many of you people out there agree with what I'm saying on that? Dansky says, defy dad 100%. But first they must think of the children. They only think of themselves. Oh, yeah. That's a tough one when you realize that they really don't give a crap about anybody other than themselves. And any and every decision they make is only based on what's in their best interest or what they think benefits them. And the really thing that will make your mind explode is when you realize that they're not necessarily doing stuff to hurt you. It's just it's like a secondary effect. Like in my scenario, I used to think everything that was happening, I'm like, man, she's doing this on purpose. And then after a while, I realized, wait a minute, she doesn't even think about it. She doesn't even care about me. Every once in a while, I mean, yeah, something will annoy her. and she'll lash out. But for the most part, all of those decisions were based on as if I didn't exist. And here's the thing. Remember that if you weren't in the picture, this kind of dovetails with the stream or the video I posted the other day. If you were not in the picture, there would be nobody to have an interrupt for the kids, and they would have unfettered access to do whatever crazy crap that they wanted to do unencumbered. And I mean, just thinking about this right now, that's exactly what my mom did. And whenever basically she ended up with full custody and I never saw my dad, I mean, did it change the crazy? Nope. It just continued on. All right, let's see here. I'm going to scroll down. I have a pretty packed day, so I'm going to have to, probably this will last an hour. Charlotte says, thank you. Interesting about catastrophic thinking. I'm the opposite in the way that I always think and hope the most positive scenario. I'm also a big believer that thoughts can create reality, however. I agree with you, Charlotte. That'd be for another video. Sometimes I want to start talking about this. I just don't know if it's prudent or would be welcome for this channel. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's weird because I'm kind of I have that positive scenario thing. I mean, I remember when I had my custody evaluation, the evaluator said I had a Pollyanna syndrome, and I'm like, what does that even mean? And I had to look it up. And I always, after I read it, it was like, oh, it's like the Monty Python, the Black Knight. It's only a flesh wound. It's like, if anybody knows what I'm talking about, you'll relate to that. It's like where the knight keeps getting his limbs cut off, and it's like, okay, you lost an arm. Let me go. Oh, it's no big deal. Anyways. Yeah. Anyways, that's pretty funny. John says, I've gotten to the point that it's improving. Great. But trying to reconnect with my son is the hard part. How old's your son, John? If you don't mind me asking. It also means that I have to prepare myself, or Charlotte says, it also means I have to prepare myself for the worst case scenario too, especially with my forthcoming custody hearing. Well, see, and then it depends on what you're talking about worst case is, right? And I don't know your scenario, right? I don't know whether you're like, well, I'm wanting, you want 50-50. And that's what your norm is, but your ex is trying to say you're a scumbag mom and shouldn't have the kids and they want full custody, or whether you're saying that you want full custody and your ex is asking for 50-50 and the worst case scenario would be 50-50. I mean, when I went through my scenario, I thought best case was 50-50. And my ex thought that was devastating. And then she proceeded to tell the kids that Daddy has more time. God, I remember that. Well, I don't like the new custody thing because now Mommy has less time. I was thinking to myself, she had all the time. I had table scraps. Of course she has less time, but now it's equal. It's not, before it was more the majority time. So it's semantics. So it depends on what the key on this is. Do you have and this goes for everybody. Do you have realistic expectations of what's going to happen in court? So many people don't. And when they walk out of there, they're devastated because of it. I mean, for instance, when I first went to court, to me, I needed 50-50 day one, and it would have been better if it would have been 50-50 day one, because then it would have saved a lot of money and time instead of, trying to jump through flaming hoops. But I went from like basically 80-20 down to, or up to 30% basically. And it didn't feel like a victory, right? I mean, what it was is, I should have seen it that the court was saying, okay, well, this whole, Dad doesn't need to be involved thing. And I'm saying, no, I want to be involved. They're like, all right, well, we're going to give you a little bit more time and see how it goes. The annoying part about that is there's no reason that I should have had to have spent, or somebody should have had to have spent $20,000 to $30,000 to get to 50-50. So that's my opinion on that. R says, I understand that we can't change anyone but ourselves. And my thought is that we are adults here and the drama of our feelings don't have anything to do with parenting. We lived our teens, now 38 and 40. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, R. The problem is when you're, again, this is for anybody who falls into this narcissistic category, they don't ever grow out of that teenage or preteen or toddler mentality. So unfortunately, you're going to be dealing with somebody like that is trapped and unable to move past it. You know, that's why at 38 and 40, you know, I'm not sure which side, you know, which one you are on this. We'll say you're the 38-year-old, that whenever you are pushing 50, that your life will fundamentally change. And hopefully you're going to emotionally grow and take your life back. And they're still going to be playing the same stupid games that they've always played. Charlotte says, oh gosh, regarding chaos, I have realized that starting to date again, and I cannot tell men the truth about how crazy and abusive my ex was because it scares them away. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even put that on the screen. Yeah. You know what I would say? Okay, I'm going to say this, and maybe it's a bad idea. Maybe. Depends on how you are emotionally. If you're still emotionally struggling with stuff, then don't do this. But if you're more pragmatic about things, I would say watching some of those, like the Better Bachelor stuff, the 33 Secrets guy, and whatever, to where you can kind of see the perspective of how men have evolved their red flag detector. Because the reality is, you know, I mean, it's dating is tough, right? I mean, online dating, highly do not recommend that unless you're planning on just doing hookups. And I don't recommend doing that because it's just spend time getting yourself as emotionally healed and moving, you know, up the rungs, so to speak, to take your life back before you start dipping your toe into that. Too much of a chance to basically draw back in a toxic person into your life. And it's like the universe gives you that other opportunity to say, oh, you didn't learn your lesson the last time. Let's go ahead and give you another opportunity. And since the painful pieces that you had before just weren't enough, let's just amplify that a bit. I have seen that repeat itself, not so much in my life, but and the only reason I think that it did not happen in my life is because I had seen that multiple times from my 20s to my 40s, where I could watch people basically just, you know, light themselves on fire and then do it again on fire. And it just kept getting worse and worse. And I'm like, oh my God, I want no part of that. Anyways, I digress. I don't know, Charlotte, let me know what you think about what I was just saying. R says, I'm not divorced, but I've been told that's what he wants after 20 years and 2 kids under 18. I don't know if he's a narcissist or avoidant attachment or immature. Yeah, that's a tough one. Well, I guess the way you'll find that out, and this is the hard part. You bring up a really great point. Because I think everybody goes through the first part of this to where you're kind of like, okay, well, no, like I did the same thing. I'm like, no, my ex isn't this. And your brain is like, nope, that's not true. And then you kept basically stepping on landmines to prove to yourself that it's not true. I'll save this other story for a different video, but So my point is this. If he wants a divorce and he doesn't try to basically light you on fire and do I can't remember the term, scorch and burn type thing, then maybe he's not NPD or borderline, and maybe it is some other issue. But what I would say, though, trust your gut. You said you have 20 years. This is it's so hard. Actually, it's making my eye twitch thinking about it. Because I knew who I was with. I just couldn't accept it. So I'm not entirely sure if the older version of me had come back and said, "Oh, Duane, you know what you're dealing with. Accept that reality and trust it." I'm not sure if I would have been able to. I mean, I kind of did, but what I kept testing, right? So I would kept dipping my toe in the water, and fortunately, I guess in retrospect, it was painful, but fortunately, and I'll do another boop. Unfortunately, she kept taking her bony little finger and going boop right in my eye, and it was like, oh, ow, that was painful, and it helped me to develop. I wonder if I can pull this up. Where is it at? Where is it at? Help me develop this concept of absolute thinking. Because in the beginning, I was so struggling with, wow, I look so weird back then without the beard. I was so struggling with accepting what was real, and I'd second guess myself. No, it isn't this. No, it's not that. And the whole the brief summary of that video is like in my situation, NPD. She's NPD. It's like in my mind, I was like, okay, 100% diagnosed, yada, yada, even though she's not. As far as I know, she never has been. But I had to do that to myself because every time I would ask the question of like, how would someone do this? Why would they do this to their kids? Why would they do this to me whenever I didn't do anything? NPD, right? I mean, it definitely helps. But you probably are going to have to, push a button every once in a while and just see what happens and see if the behaviors the pattern behaviors follow with what you think is going on. And if they're not, you have to trust the behaviors. If the person's saying, no, I'm not this, I'm not that, but their actions demonstrate that, oh yeah, they are, this and they are that, then believe that. Dansky to R says, hang in there. You have to. Let's see. R says, yeah, I don't know how this is going to go. I never had them away and never has he had them longer than a day fully responsible for them. He worked. I was at home with the kids. Yeah, it's tough. Well, I can say this because I know there's some men now in this category where they were the stay-at-home. When your life is based on a certain way of living, and that completely changes, and your identity is basically, well, I am the 100% caregiver. That's my job. That's who I am. And when that falls apart, it's tough. Conversely, I mean, I was the worky person, but let me back up. My identity back then was, I have a family, I have kids, I have a house, I have a career, I have all these things that this is who I am. And when the marriage blew apart, then it starts, okay, boom. All right, well, the marriage is something, but I still have my kids. Well, then they start attacking that. And it's like, oh crap, I don't have a family anymore. I don't have anything, all I'm doing is going to work to give this other person money. And then things start happening at work and your identity at work starts going. That's why it's so important to be able to self-validate. And what I mean by that is when you gauge your worth off of external factors, you are in a very dangerous position. And don't get me wrong, when things are great, it is absolutely awesome whenever you get that promotion at work and you have that loving family and wife or spouse next to you and your kids and everything. You know, you're living that life. But if that's what defines you, it puts you into and this is what happened to me, and it puts you into a really dark space whenever you lose all of it. Because, well, who are you? What are you? What's your value? You know? And then you have your reputation. And when these people start attacking your reputation, you know, it's like, you know, and this is what happens. I mean, it's systematically, and this is what happened with me. You know, it's like, okay, I have the whole package, you know, family, yada, yada, yada. Okay, boom, you know, the marriage is falling apart. But it's like, all right, it's falling apart, but we're mature adults. We can stay friendly. And it's like, nope, that ain't the case. And then it's like the smear campaign starts running. So your reputation is being tainted. And the next thing you know, the kids are like, I'm scared of you, Daddy. And then it's like, and then it ties in their reputation. And before you know it, you're knocked down into the dirt. And what happens, we'll come back over to this, you start going through this catastrophic thinking. You're like, oh my God, I've lost everything. Everything's is horrible, you know? And then you start thinking it's never going to work out. You know, I know I'm talking to the positive in the bullet points, but anyways, I should have turned the time on so I knew where these comments, I wonder if I can do that. I don't know. Sometimes I need to just keep my inside voice into my head, right? Charlotte says, my ex-husband, narcissist, is hoping to live off my salary. I'm a teacher. You know what? Narcissist people take. And they feel like they're entitled to whatever they had before. So that does not surprise me, Charlotte. You know? And it's tough. I mean, if you guys remember my earlier conversations with, I got to get their name right. I'm thinking Leslie Powers. I don't even know what her channel's name. She's changed her name, but you know, when I did some interviews with her in the past, you know, she, same category, married a toxic person, and he ran her through the freaking cleaners. You know, basically it's like, okay, well, I want half the money, half the house, half of everything. What? You haven't done anything. You know, it's like, all you've done is try to tear things down. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird because I understand, excuse me, I understand why the laws are set up, right? Because in the olden days when someone, you know, a highly successful person and everything's great and they're making a lot of money and they're like, you know, my secretary is, you know, not time to trade up for a newer model, and then just walks away and there was zero consequences for the person, the wage earner at the time. You know, that's not right. But how many of you think, let me just throw this out there. How many of you out there, I'm curious. I don't want to be angry, however you answer. How many of you think that I should pay my ex for the rest of my life alimony? You know? Curious what you think. Jeff says, hi, Duane. Thank you for all you do. I emailed you a few weeks ago about my situation. I used to live in Palmdale. Oh, did I not answer you? I remember seeing that. Been listening to your show for a long time. Been divorced a year now. She took everything. Jeff, if I did not respond, I apologize. Send me another note. Unfortunately, sometimes it's hard for me to keep up on everything. But I do remember reading your email. Yeah. John Hafley says, mine lived off me for about 16 years because she was, quote unquote, sick. Magically, she started a new career after trying to destroy me. Yeah, it's amazing how there's no jobs. I remember at one point, it was early on. I mean, it was way early. This is when I still would actually talk to her. This is before she walked away from the house. And I remember talking to her, and I said, I think I said, hey, you know, are you going to get a job? Well, I'm a full-time parent. I mean, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I can't get a job. Like, you put your kid in daycare. Well, my kids don't go to daycare. And I'm like, yeah, they do, because I'm paying for it right now, right? But yeah, but again, it was the mentality of her, right? It wasn't thinking about me. It wasn't thinking about anyone else. And the sad part is had she done it, it would have helped everybody, right? She would have been able to start building a career. Now, let me back up. Don't get me wrong. She did actually go to school and get an associate's degree, which, that was probably smart. The only reason she did it, though, was because I, like a freaking idiot, told her I was coming after her. And what I should have done, if I was smart, is I should have waited until the school year started, not said anything, and just filed paperwork saying, hey, it's been 2 years. What the hell? But like an idiot, I kept telling her, I'm coming after you. I'm coming after you. So she, when she knew the time was coming up, it's like, I'm trying to better myself. Anyways, I digress. Charlotte says, it's a sense of entitlement. Yeah, it's funny. That entitlement word used to annoy the crap. It used to trigger me. I would be, when someone was like, I'm entitled, because that's what she used to say. Well, I'm entitled to this. I'm entitled to that. So it used to actually provoke me. Now I don't care anymore. R says, I'm so willing to adjust if it's needed, but the communication that wasn't there, or maybe I wasn't really thinking serious, but he claims he told me to get a job. His past versus my past isn't the same. See, and that's the problem, right? You're making some really great points today, because I've heard through the grapevine way back when, the story that the ex was telling is that I wouldn't let her get a job. She wanted to work, but I wouldn't let her. The problem is like trying to this is where it gets tough, because you can sit there and try to argue those facts, or try to convince other people when they tell you something. But, it's an exercise in frustration. It's hard not to want to dive into that, because whenever they're saying something that isn't true or is out of context, you want to correct people. And I can tell you from experience, if you want to listen to me, that does not do anybody any good. If somebody is believing it, or somebody just wants the drama, you are absolutely not helping yourself when you try to fight and counterfight everything. I remember at one point, person I worked with, I was actually their supervisor. Then when I stepped down, we were peers. And this other person that worked underneath me at the, way back when, but who was also friends with my ex, was going around telling, she was like, hey, I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you. And I said, okay. I made time to go meet up with her. And she's like, this guy is saying, that you abandoned your family, and you did this and you did that. And I'm like, and she's like, well, I know that that's not true. And I just wanted you to know. And I'm like, yeah, I know. That guy actually tried to destroy me. He got himself in trouble, and he constantly was using my name, saying the only reason he was in trouble was because he was friends with my ex and he was helping her out, and I hated him for it and was trying to get him fired. If I was trying to get him fired, that guy would have had a harder life. But yeah, anyways. Alrighty. Okay, I'm trying to get back down into I really wish I could see the times. Dan says, DSD, thanks for taking the time today. Live streams always takes a positive effect on my day. Well, glad to hear that. And as I've mentioned, as you guys have probably noticed, I'm starting to ramp some of these things up. My goal is at the end of the summer, whenever my oldest is in school, my youngest has moved out, my other one, I don't know what she's doing. Bottom line is I'm supposed to potentially have an empty house. And as long as they don't kick me out of this house, meaning the landlord, that should give me an opportunity to start creating more stuff and doing more live streams, doing more live shows. I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work, but I am going to be creating more stuff, and I'm looking forward to it because I really enjoy doing these things. Charlotte says, I'd be happy with 50-50 if my ex was a normal, well-adjusted human rather than a narcissist with rage problems. Well, what I would say typically, not always, stereotypically with men, if they're fighting for 50-50 just because they're trying to punish you, once they get it, they won't actually do it. Now, the thing is, what you have to remember, Charlotte, let's say that is the scenario. Let's say you go through this, you go to court, they say, you know what, whatever, everything being equal, 50-50, everything's, that's the way it's going to be. Because a lot of places are leaning towards that. As long as you fight for it, a lot of times 50-50 comes out. Then typically what happens is it's too much of a hassle for the narcissistic, self-obsessed person. And then they don't exercise their time. They're constantly giving you more time. The key is, if that happens, Charlotte, it's going to be irritating. And it's going to be like, you scumbag. You got 50-50. You're paying 50-50. You're only doing 80-20. You should pay 80-20. And you go back to court. What I would highly encourage you to do, if you get stability and they start staying, moving out, and it's annoying, let them look at it that loss of money is the payment to minimize their toxic effect on your life and your kids' lives. It's going to suck for the kids to have any parent basically reject them, but that's what you have to look at. I've seen so many people get irritated, you can almost use a different word, irritated that the ex fought for this, drug their life through hell, and now they're not doing it. And it's like, no, this is effed up, and go back to court, and it's like it blows up in their face because these people don't just slink off. So be careful of that. Dan Ski says 50-50 only works with an airtight parenting plan. Quote, these people want to twist and turn and interpret it in their way. Yeah, and what Dan's talking about, and I've talked about this in the past, is when you have a toxic person, you should have a lot of detail and specificity, if that's a word, in your court order, and then just revert back to that. You just have to make sure that you can follow the same thing. And what's going to happen is they're not going to follow it. You follow it. And then what I ended up doing is I tried to negotiate or whatever. I felt, okay, well, this is not that big of a deal. And then when I realized what I was dealing with, I'm like, oh dear God. And I'm like, nope, follow the court order. And even when it hurt me, it's like, well, it doesn't give me more time or doesn't help me, this way or that way. I still just follow the court order. So what Dan's talking about is it is very important to have specificity. Again, let me know if that's a word, because then you have something to hang your hat on. If it is vague, it will blow up in your face, because like Dan's talking about, they will take that ambiguity and try to twist it around. Like mine. I mean, mine, like way back when, it says in the order, one parent equal, on even odd years, one parent has the kids from the time they get out of school for Christmas break until they go back. Period. The other parent will have a few hours on Christmas Day mutually agreed by both parents. Now, a normal human would say, okay, well, if we sit down and I say, I want these 4 hours, you negotiate back and forth, and then you mutually agree on a time. My ex took it that I wanted, this wasn't funny at the time, but thinking back on it, it's like, it's so ridiculous. My ex was like, well, I'm taking the kids out of state for Christmas. I'm like, well, how are you going to do that when they're supposed to be at my place on Christmas Day? Well, that's only if we mutually agree, and I don't agree with that, so I'm taking them. I mean, technically that was pretty clear, but that was the mindset. It was like, oh, well, no. I mean, I mean, so on that scenario, what I wish I would have had written in there is, at 11 on Christmas Day, the other parent will have the kids for, 11. I mean, probably used to say, we'll feed them dinner and bring them back, at 4 or something, early dinner or something. I don't know. But yeah, good one. Good call, Dan. That's a good one. Anyways. Ooh, that's good. Well, I'll just see what he says on that. All right. Dansky says, these people use anger as a weapon to control people. Oh, yeah. Well, they do it. Okay. They can use anger to try to force you to do something. And they can also try to push your buttons to get you angry to then use that against you as well. This is from what I was talking about earlier. Sunny Day says, oh my God, exactly. You will get the lesson until you learn from it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Charlotte says, answering DeFi Dad, talking about rage issues, says, by rage issues, I mean he would throw and smash objects, assault me, assaulted his mother-in-law, punches walls, and is also very emotionally and verbally abusive. Now, here's the thing, Charlotte. If all of that has been appropriately documented, then you should do okay on the custody thing. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. God, I think that's even... See, I know it. So earlier, Dan, our DeFi Dad, had asked Charlotte, please explain what you mean by rage issues that get used a lot. And he's talking about it like in the context of what happened with me, where the ex is like, oh, he's abusive and physically and emotionally abusive. And it's like, what? So it was just said. It's like, it's said, put out there in the ether. And this is the reason why people making false allegations is so bad, because now what happens is when someone makes the allegation about that type of behavior, people are reluctant to believe it now. It's like, well, what do you mean? Not that that's what's happening here, but I mean, it's just like, it just makes it really tough. And then, so people who are being abused, who actually need help, oftentimes don't get help because it's, because it's such a pain. And the people who are making it up, they're not really, that's like mine, oh my God, I'm scared. And then go to a school event. It's like, oh, sit right here. And my brain was like, wait a minute, you're telling, we just were in court the other day, or I just got letters from your attorney saying I'm a scumbag and you need a restraining order and whatever. But I mean, it's like, what I couldn't reconcile way back when is how can you say and act like a timid little, I'm so scared. And then when you're around the person, act like nothing's wrong. Well, it's all about control, right? It's like those accusations were not made out of truth. They were made to like, okay, well, you did this and I'm going to punish you. So Sunny Day says you can't fix them. You didn't break them. Yeah. Unfortunately, we let them in our lives though. Let's see. Yeah, so DeFi Dad, whoops. Gosh darn it, click on the right button, Duane. DeFi Dad said back to Charlotte, says, I asked that because this has been stated in my case for myself, and it's not the case, and there's no evidence to support that. I am male, and those traits seem to be stereotypical of males. Yeah, and here's the interesting part about this. Since it's been overused so much, as long as you don't fall into the trap of doing something that like what I think R was taught, or was it Sunny? Like Charlotte was talking about, is it'll come out, right? I mean, if you can just maintain your cool. I have a coaching client that's been dealing with this, where every few months there's a new emergency order, trying to get a restraining order or supervised visitation, and none of it has ever worked. And it's like all it would take, and the person, his ex, keeps basically taking another swing at bat every chance they get, because, well, maybe if one time it works, then they'll win. But and it's so tough. I mean, I know when I was going through this and I felt like my whole reputation was getting just completely destroyed, you got to go through this thing. It's like, well, wait a minute, I'm getting accused of all this. So, I'm not even doing any of this. So maybe they should see the monster, so to speak. If you want to ensure that you lose and you get a permanent restraining order, do that. All right, let's see. Charlotte says, in regards to dating, I totally agree with what you said. That's why I put dating on hold. Very smart. Happy to work on myself for a while. Very, very smart. So I think this is really, it's with the way things are now and how dating is so messed up. I think it's really rough for women because, now because of people, more and more people are understanding how the court systems, well, I'll say, are biased against men, biased against anybody who actually has resources. So unfortunately, this is also true. If the woman is the primary breadwinner and you go through a divorce, you can pretty much guarantee you're going to have that experience. So a lot of people are just saying, okay, I'm not going to risk it. Or you make your criteria so strong. It's like, okay, well, I don't want to raise someone else's kid, which I kind of get, right? I mean, there was a period of time where it seemed like an honorable thing to do to, marry a single mom. I don't think many people do that anymore. So it's one of those things where, and I think women, you got to be really careful, because when you start dating, if you're not emotionally and ready for it, you'll probably end up finding a lot of people who want to have some happy fun time with you, and that's all. And that, unless that's what you're looking for, I guess some people do. I don't think that's a good path to go down. Meet people in person, develop relationships there. Understand. Like for me, I understood when I went through my divorce that my priority was being there for my kids. And I'm in a long-term relationship. We'll hit 10 years, well, not next month, January. But the priority has always been maintaining the relationship with the kids and not lighting things on fire. So as soon as I realized that if the relationship progressed with like us moving in together, getting married, whatever, that it would potentially light everything on fire, it wasn't worth it. Because I took the responsibility of being a dad and, taking that hit, so to speak, I guess. I took it. That was all right, that's what I signed up for. So that's what the priority is. It's funny because you'll see people like, oh, my priority is my kids. And then their actions demonstrate that it's not, if that makes any sense. Okay, so I scrolled up and down. So I'm trying to look at some of these. Charlotte says to Defy Dad, yes, I think many situations there are false allegations, unfortunately. However, in my situation, I have plenty of evidence to show the court, and all I'm doing is telling the truth. And the reality, so again, it'll be proof will be in the pudding, right? So if you have everything lined up and it actually paints the reality story, then should go that way. In other words, should be where like, okay, you're making the allegation, you have evidence to substantiate it, and as a result of that, we're going to rule accordingly. Charlotte, what I would say to you on this, though, and I'll say this on anybody who's listening on this, if, let's say it doesn't go, let's say you go to court and they don't look at any of it, you have to take a step back and say, okay, so somehow my presentation did not communicate effectively what the reality is, and why is that? And I kind of had that happen to me early on, where there were some things where people were kind of like, well, that doesn't make sense. And I'm like, okay, well, I obviously am not. This is how I got to the point where I finally just stopped trying to convince people that of who the ex was. Because for me, this wasn't in court, because I didn't know a 32nd of what I know now. So I had no idea how to really appropriately articulate any of this. But what I did notice is that certain people, when I, like even teachers, when I would try to this is what I'm dealing with, please believe me, it made me look like they're like, okay, all right, whatever, you must be crazy. And then when I finally just said, okay, let the actions demonstrate, let my actions demonstrate who I am, let her actions demonstrate who she is, that's when things started to go better. And I even got to the point where even like mutual friends, I'm like, I ain't getting into it. I'm like, the only thing I would say is, hey, complicated, high conflict divorce, but whatever, you want to be, I don't, whatever. And typically in a short amount of time, it was like, oh my God, let them expose themselves. Hopefully that made sense. Yeah, this is what Defy Dad is saying to Charlotte, kind of what I was just saying. Wish you well, but remember to stick to the facts and proof for court. Most will not work with speculation, hearsay. Document the evidence to protect yourself and your children. And the key to this, and what Defy Dad is saying, if you start if the impression of you is that you're blowing things out of proportion and you're trying to make something out of nothing, it will blow up in your face. So you got to be really, now I'm sure with what you're talking about, you should have court, you should have police reports and all that kind of stuff, which should help you. But again, if you find that that it didn't work, or that your message was not heard, so to speak, you got to say, okay, well, what happened? Why didn't that work? This is also, this kind of dovetails into another comment I want to, let's see, can I make that go away? That I want to bring up. And that is, I've talked with and I've dealt with some clients who are irritated that the ex is constantly throwing stuff at them. And they're like, well, I want to throw back. And it's like, man, you got to be careful, because the last thing you want is for you to look like a knucklehead like the ex. You want to maintain your reputation. You want to maintain the reality that you're stable, that you're calm, and that the other person is emotionally unstable, is not calm, is not thinking rationally, and try to basically paint the picture that their pattern of behavior is dangerous for the kids. I'm working with a client right now where finally the ex has done so much that the evaluators and team are starting to say 50-50 is not appropriate. So it's just it depends on how you approach it. R says, entitled, it all ends with, if even remember what I did, like it's my fault. I don't even know what happened that made him flip out. Well, here's okay. Most of the time, the reason a narcissistic person will flip out is when they realize they no longer have emotional control over you. That's when things tend to, just flame out. And what you're talking about is exactly the way a lot of people feel. Like, I started putting boundaries and I started changing my life, and I didn't understand, how did I go from hero to zero in overnight? Not even overnight. It was like, in an afternoon, and it made no sense. Well, these people are, basically you're dealing with a toddler in an adult body, and that is the mentality. And unfortunately, when a toxic person realizes that you're no longer suitable supply, or you're no longer, or basically that you see through the mask, the first thing they all do is they try to destroy you. They try to destroy your reputation. That's where the smear campaign comes from. It's textbooks. I mean, it's what they follow. All right. Sunny day. Alimony should have a time limit. Exactly. I want my Jeep money. I don't know. I always used to joke about that if she ever got married or whatever, that the alimony would be my Jeep money. But nowadays, I don't even think that would cover it. Maybe if it was, if it didn't have tires on it. Anyways. All right. All right, I'm going to try to get down farther because I know I'm falling way behind on the comments. I don't know if it's really active or I'm just really slow. Nobody comment on that. All right, let's see. Oh, Defy Dad's talking about the alimony thing. So I'm way behind because that was a while ago. It says, no, unless there's a serious reason such as becoming disabled while you were married and they don't have the ability to adapt and advance. Yep. All right. Well, I'm going to have to start wrapping things up. So I'm just going to look through and see if I have missed anything. R says, I only question going forward with a divorce is because at a point in time, tables were reversed. I stayed because I was thinking about all that came with it. I looked into the divorce and was brutal. I don't remember what the next part about that was. Anyways, I don't know. I mean, that's a tough one because living in a toxic situation is not healthy. It's not good. I don't know. I guess I never wanted to get divorced. Actually, initially, I didn't even file for divorce. I would just file for legal separation. I wanted space, and I was actually hoping that, that what I thought, what I fundamentally knew is true wasn't true. But when it turned really ugly, right, whenever she was making really bad accusations that were like, could go to jail for, I'm like, oh, F this. I'm done, Because I was like, well, I don't care. I don't ever want to get remarried. I'm fine with legal separation. That way she still got medical. I know I'm going to have to, I was really trying to protect, I guess, maybe. The reality is again, she realized that I saw through the facade. She couldn't control me anymore. And it was scorched earth policy. Shane. 100% my ex loves when I get angry about anything. It's probably because she feels like it validates her own anger issues. Doesn't take much to set her off. Kids tell me she screams and yells regularly. Well, and the reason she likes it whenever you do respond is because it feels like, yes, I'm still connected. That's a problem that a lot of us do end up having, is that you kind of get to the point where you don't necessarily want to cut the person out and start trying to get them out of your life, because you realize that once it's over and you don't have any connection. That's why sometimes these people will drag on the court stuff, because they want to keep the fight. They want to keep the connection going. A lot of times they'll just switch and use the kids for that. But yeah. All right. Let's see here. What do we got? No knuckleheads allowed. That's funny. Shane says, being burned by someone you spent 15 years with, had 2 kids with, and supported them through everything hurts bad. Yes, it does. And actually what was really kind of funny on my thing is like, I was like, because it was 2 decades. We had kids late. So kids were 12, 10 and 6, I think. Anyways, and yeah, I'm like, you know, when I realized my whole life was a lie, I'm like, F this. I'm not so, you know, you're not living off me anymore. You know, go out and frickin', you know, I protected you for 2 decades. Go live out in the real world. Little did I know that the family court had different ideas and basically, see, this is where I think the universe teaches you a lesson, right? And this is probably, I did it to myself because I was like, nope, you're going to get out there. You're going to have to, you know, be the, you know, work at McDonald's or, you know, you're going to have to frickin' get out there and realize how good you had it and how ugly, you know, this is going to be. And then they ordered me to pay her enough to where she could live off me for 8 years. She was able to get a car, house, go to movies, go on trips. Oh, that was a bitter pill. That was such a bitter pill to swallow. Oh my God, that made me angry. So if she's ever watches this video, you won. You got another one on me and you made me angry for a long time. But I'm going to go back to this. Once I let it go and it no longer had power. Why is this not, it's not on my, what am I doing wrong here? Oh, I guess I don't show the mouse. Oh, that's annoying. Oh, there we go. When I let it go, things started to change. But for the longest time when I was angry, it was not a good time. Hey, Tumblers. Tumblers just jumped on. DSD, good morning. Good morning to you. R says, DSD, I was willing to work on our marriage, so I stayed. He begged me to think of our family. Well, you know what? You can only do so much, Art. You know, you try, and at some point you have to have boundaries, and there has to be consequences. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't make it work. I have a buddy of mine whose marriage almost flamed out a few years ago. I was a high school friend. And, you know, his wife has some issues and he set some firm boundaries and was willing to, you know, divorce if that happened. And they've made it work, you know, I mean, so there is a way, but the person has to do something. Their actions have to demonstrate that they're working towards it. Like in his situation, I don't remember what the details of her diagnosed issues might be, but bottom line is when she starts going off the deep end, he now is like, hey, this is happening. We've talked about this. And most of the time it starts a reset. It's like, that's the pattern interrupt to get things back on track. But again, he's coming from a position, I don't know if strength's the right word, but what I will say is it's one of those things where there is consequences. So it's outstanding. I mean, I worked on mine. I mean, I tried to do the marriage counseling, but there comes a point in time whenever, if the actions do not follow the words, you have to believe the actions. You know, it's like, you need to think you're ruining our family. Well, no, this is not working. You know, you're ruining the family. Well, you don't have to get in a tit for tat. That never accomplishes anything. You just have to have some set expectations, like this is the way things have to be. And if they're not, there's going to be consequences for it. If that makes sense, you'll have to let me know what you think. Shane says, yep, she still thinks she has control over me. Hey guys, I will tell you this, guys, gals, whatever. When you're dealing with a toxic narcissist, if the ex thinks that they have control over you and that they're winning, it typically, that's where they get their supply, right? It's like, haha, I'm winning. So they don't feel like they have to light you on fire. So sometimes, and oh my God, it took me a long time to realize this one. Sometimes it actually is helpful whenever they think they're winning. And I know it's annoying. There was a period of time where I would go out of my way to make sure that she did not think that she was winning. And, you know, I mean, I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I was thinking that if she had that epiphany that this wasn't working, that she would stop. but it just made it worse. She either doubled or tripled down, or she focused on the kids, or it just made it worse for everybody. So to me, her thinking I'm an angry, bitter ex, I don't know what she thinks now. I mean, now that she knows about the channel and stuff, I'm not entirely sure what she thinks. Reality is I don't care anymore, Anyways. All righty. Let's see. Sunny Day says, Shane, mine destroyed my life and work life because of his family's name in town. He kicked me and the baby out and filed divorce, then lied about me to all. It was so hard. Yeah, I was trying to hit that. I didn't click the button right. Anyways, you know what I would say on that is if that gives you the opportunity to pack up and leave and get away from the situation, then do it. Now, the problem is probably they will not want you to escape and will try to keep you from leaving. So you got to be very tactical about that. Father X says, my ex is borderline. Sorry about that. Unless you have a diagnosis, sometimes that's helpful. When I was awarded custody, I released myself from her universe, built walls to insulate me from her chaos while still co-parenting. It's easier when her words don't matter. Yep. Oh, yeah. I mean, if you have full custody now and they're just this little storm over there and it's like, yeah, you just stay over there. You just got to be careful because a lot of times they'll try to suck the kids back in. Tim says, let them believe they won. No use joining them on the deck of the Titanic as it sinks. I've got the perfect seat right next to the orchestra. You're in that little boat all by yourself with no jacket. Oh my God. How many people, when I just said that, freaking visualize that? Because when I read that, I was like, oh my God, that's what I saw. That's a good one, Tim. I like that one. Shane says, wow, so glad I caught the live stream. So needed. Yeah, glad we were able to do it. I am going to start wrapping things up. I will Shane says, our Sunny Day says, yes, in the end now, 36 years after, the ex is in bad health and I'm doing very well with great job and own lots of real estate. I survived. That's the thing. See, you don't again, I've said this before, like my life now is just so much better. It's not perfect yet. Still working towards it. But yeah, you can turn around. But here's the thing though, if you don't get yourself on track and you stay angry, you stay bitter, it will suck you into the pit of despair. All righty. And the kids. R says, and the kids, though, get up and leave. How? Now, in your situation, since if I remember, oh, crap, I might be getting your story confused with Charlotte's story. Oh, no, because you haven't filed yet. See, and you're talking about parental alienation. That parental alienation is out of control. Yeah, you said your kids are older, if I remember correctly. Didn't you say your kids are like close to 18? Yeah, see, that's the problem is if it's being spun against you and it's already taking hold, I would say you need to work on that relationship. If the relationship with the kids is important to you, which I'm sure it is, but there's a caveat, right? Again, it goes back to the boundary thing too. If the kids are turned against you and they're attacking you constantly, that doesn't mean that you have to be their punching bag forever. So, but if there's a way that you can repair that relationship while you still have time and access to them, then I would definitely encourage you to do that. And then if you get to a point where it's like, okay, you know, they're all adults, they've made their decisions. You have to be careful how you make this, right? So I'm going to say this two different ways. If they're adults and they've made their life decisions and you're like, you know what, I've done my part. I'm going to go live my life now. All I want is peace in my life and I'm leaving. Great. However, you can turn around and say that I've done my part. You know, I am done with this. I'm out of here. In other words, like all the emotion and feeling behind it is anger and just, you know, bitterness and despair. That can follow you for a long time. So it's really about the mindset of where you are at on this. So on that, thanks guys for hanging out with me today. If you're watching this on YouTube and you're thinking, man, I wish there was an audio version of this. Well, there is, and it's on Spotify and iTunes podcasts and Google Play and all the other platforms that I've signed up with. And if you're actually on Spotify, even the video will be on there. And so check that out. If you do go over there to Spotify, you might even hear me read a commercial about creating your own podcast because they finally allowed me to do that, which was really awesome. So on that, let me see here. Thanks everybody for hanging out with me. I want to thank the channel members who help keep the lights on, keep the internet up. Their names are scrolling across the screen if you're watching the video. Thank you so much for doing that. They just basically went down and became a member on YouTube. You can actually do that on Spotify as well, but I don't think I had anyone do that. Have a great rest of your day, and I will catch you on the next one.